5 seconds, because I've just been handed something that the Senate has just passed a resolution, and I will read to you as best I can from this copy because it is a bit difficult. This is in regards to the remarks to recent statements of Louis Farrakhan. Mr. Louis Farrakhan, close advisor to one of the presidential candidates, is reported to have referred to the Jewish faith as a gutter religion. Mr. Farrakhan has also accused the United States of being a criminal for our aiding and abetting role at the time of the creation of the Israeli nation. And Mr. Farrakhan has even called the very existence of Israel an outlaw act. Therefore, it is the sense of the Senate that there is no place in our society nor in our electoral process for hateful, bigoted expressions of anti-Jewish, Jewish, and racist sentiments such as those being made by Louis Farrakhan, and all such vicious expressions must be condemned. The leadership of the Senate is instructed to communicate with the chairman of the Democratic and Republican parties to request that they immediately repudiate in writing the sentiments and expressions of hatred made by Mr. Farrakhan, and it was passed in the Senate moments ago, 95-0.
Well, that's very nice. And there's not one black senator, is there? After we've been in this country for 400 years, you listen to me. And I want you to know, Ms. Freeman, that nothing that the United States Senate does frightens, disturbs, or bothers me. My repudiation of the Senate carries more weight with God than the Senate's repudiation of me. We helped you build this country. We worked this land. I just want you to listen. I hope the Senate is listening. Before you became a republic and had a Senate, 5,000 blacks fought in the Revolutionary War, Crispus Attucks being the first to die. We fought on Concord, Bunker Hill, there in Boston. After the Revolutionary Army got their freedom, they would not recognize the contribution of those blacks. The Civil War, the same way. Now here it is. These men condemn me of hateful, bigoted remarks, but they will not condemn the racism that pervades this country, of which the Senate is a prime body. Why are there not any black senators? Yet you say that representation, or taxation without representation is tyranny. Then we black people in America live under tyranny, and we black people in America will raise up our voices to repudiate the United States Senate, the United States Congress, the United States government, because it was the United States government under the counterintelligence program of J. Edgar Hoover that murdered and assassinated black leaders and destroyed black organizations. What did the Senate say, and what did the Senate do? It's this same Senate that appropriates money for the CIA to mine the harbors of Nicaragua and send troops into Grenada and do all of the wicked things that the Senate has backed around the world. I don't care 2 cents for the United States Senate's repudiation. I warn the Senate, and I warn the government, and I warn the president that America is headed down the drain. You better listen to this little black slave coming up from among you. My voice is the voice of God in your midst. And you are doing to me just what you did to all the prophets and those prophetic voices that rose up before me. You condemn Jesus, and the Roman Senate repudiated him. But today you worship him. What will you do for me tomorrow?
Now, in relationship to the statement that you made, critical thinking.
Yes.
And listening to the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he stated that you are doing to me what you have always done to all the prophets and messengers of God. This controversy between the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Jewish community, and the United States government. Why do they keep bringing up the same lie? He called Judaism a gutter religion. But most important, in using critical thinking, what is the motivation behind it?
Thank you, thank you. I think that history as well as scriptural prophecy have shown us that whenever there is a oppressive ruling body who rules based on lies and deceit and murder, their greatest fear, their greatest threat is someone who embodies the truth that will expose their deceit, their lies, and their murderous, treacherous ways. This is the case that we find when we look at all of the prophets and messengers of God, particularly this figure of Jesus, this messianic figure of Jesus we read about in the Bible. It was his controversy, particularly with members of what he deemed a satanic type of Jew, Jewish leadership, who deceived the people, who had financial and informational type of control and manipulation over the people. They feared Jesus, and to keep the people from hearing the liberating voice that Jesus represents, they sought to defame his character with lies. So the scriptures show us that this man was hated without a cause. Well, let's bring it up to today with the controversy that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan seems to be engulfed in, particularly with very powerful members of the Jewish community. And it's the very same principle that we just finished discussing concerning Jesus. He is a man in Minister Farrakhan who represents a truth that exposes those who happen to be in power, who exposes those rulers, not just in theory, but by name and face. You see, he identifies those specific groups and personnel involved in the systemic corruption and racism that pervades America. So this, in a nutshell, is the dilemma that we see our people facing, and the Honorable Minister Farrakhan is taking the helm of this fight.
Okay, brothers and sisters, if you're now just tuning in via Facebook, we're Facebook Live, so if we make any mistake, as they say, blame it on the mind, not the heart.
There you go.
But we are live, and we are discussing a very critical topic. I want to get back to that critical thinking as it relates to black people and this subject matter. But also I want to look at the spiritual significance of this controversy between the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Jews. And we want to draw a parallel because we said the time and what must be done.
Yes.
Why do you think it's very important for black people in general, first, to pay critical attention to this controversy?
Because this controversy embodies the same controversy that black people have been facing since our sojourn here in America. It involved critical thinking, or the lack thereof. In order for a people, black people, to be made into slaves, to be made into tools for white America, there had to be a dehumanizing process. And that dehumanizing process is a process that forces our people not to be able to think critically. So in the enslavement process, you notice that reading was not permitted among black people. Why? Because reading induces critical thinking. Writing was not permitted among black people because the ability to write and communicate effectively, black folks could have easily written their own emancipation papers or written the freedom papers of others, you know. So keeping our people away from vital information has been and still is a key part of the enslavement process. It was done then, and it's done on a much more sophisticated level now. Now we have what they call thought police, where people and groups are targeting anyone who speaks critically of those in power. You may be surprised, Brother James, to find out or to know that it is becoming illegal for an American citizen to publicly criticize the state of Israel. With all the wrong that the state of Israel has done and continues to do, violating perhaps more UN violations than any other country in the world, with it being a criminal settler colony in and of itself, it is becoming illegal for American citizens to publicly criticize the wrongdoing of Israel. And that sentiment is becoming more and more pervasive as anyone, especially the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, because he's been the most effective at awakening and enlightening the public to these truths. They've targeted him perhaps the utmost by restricting some of his YouTube videos, by restricting and limiting and suppressing even some of his social media words and videos and those who follow him. So we see the thought police or the slave patrols in the form of the thought police taking place on a whole nother level today. But all of it is to keep our people from being able to think critically, because if we applied critical thinking as we should, we would find out who our open enemies are. And then also in doing so, we'd also find out who we truly are. And that truth alone is the root of this controversy.
Okay, now when you said the root of this controversy, for those who are tuning into Facebook Live, you might see a little glow on the screen. That's because of the lighting. But I want to go to what the Muslim believe in the Final Call newspaper, because it kind of set the base for this controversy. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote on what the Muslim believe. Point number 5 said, we believe in the resurrection of the dead. Not in a physical resurrection, but in a mental resurrection. We believe that the so-called Negroes are most in need of mental resurrection. Therefore, they will be resurrected first. Now, this is the most important part. And when you talk about us being stripped of our names, our language, our culture, and our God, and the ability to read and write, which destroyed our critical thinking. So when they come with the name calling, he's a hate teacher, he's anti-Semitic, is that to arouse emotions in us, to cloud our thinking?
Exactly. I think you said it perfectly. That's the method of the great propagandists, to incite and induce certain emotions that will cloud the people's sense and ability to reason properly. And this is the MO, the modus operandi of the American government and most Western powers. They either use fear or terror to, again, induce certain emotions to keep people's sense of reason clouded. It's a tactic that never gets old. It's still a very effective tactic, and we tend to be the victims of it, the primary victims of it. So when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said in what you just read that...
And let me cut you off for a minute, because I asked you that question because I was so involved in what you were saying, I almost forgot the question. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that we are the fulfillment of Genesis 15 and 13.
The chosen people.
Which said, know of a surety, Abram, that thy seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs. And they shall afflict them and serve them for 400 years. When you look at the Final Call newspaper, it said, blacks, true children of Israel. That creates a controversy.
And now we're getting to the root of the controversy. You know, and it's perhaps surprising to some, the root of the controversy stems from a theological difference. You know, some may think that Minister Farrakhan is just trying to be bad and macho by targeting the most powerful groups on the earth. No, no, no. It has to be understood that when the Nation of Islam, since our inception in the early 1930s, made the claim that black people are the chosen people of God, this totally conflicts with the very paradigm and system upon which this whole world is based. This entire system and world is based on antagonizing and dehumanizing black people. You see, just about all of the world in some form or fashion benefited from the enslavement of black people, you know, especially the white Western powers here in America. So this whole society is rooted and based on the dehumanizing and suppression of this unique people who have undergone a type of slavery and a type of suffering that no other people in human history have encountered to this degree or to this level of severity. So you have a unique people who have undergone what no other people have gone through, and it's this people who've gone through this real oven, you see, this real fire and furnace of affliction called the transatlantic slave trade. And so God would use a people like this to become his chosen people, as the scripture, the prophetic scripture that you just mentioned in Genesis 15 and 13, that lays the basis of this chosen people. You know, talking about Abraham's seed who would be in bondage for 400 years, taken to another land and would serve another people during this time, after which God would come and he would also judge this nation. Any theologian who looks at this and neglects the apparent history and truth of what black people have undergone is a theologian who is not worth his or her salt. Because history has proven that such never took place 4,000 some odd years ago of what we read about in the biblical Exodus. But we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that these scriptures we read of this chosen people, most of that is prophecy, you see? And prophecy is speaking of things that is supposed to happen in the future. Well, religious folk have been so caught up and misdirected into confusing prophecy with history that we'll read scriptures thinking, looking way back 2,000, 4,000, perhaps even 6,000 years ago, and miss the very fulfillment of what is taking place. And so to validate what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, we can find no other persons fitting this description of this lost sheep, this lost people, this Abraham seed, this dry bones in the valley, this lost sheep of the house of Israel. We can find no other people actually fulfilling these things more than black people right here in America. And it's that truth that lays the basis of this controversy, because there's another people who have deceived the entire world that has the world believing they are the chosen people. You see? So now these European Ashkenazi Jews who have settled and taken the land from the Palestinians and settled there like bullies and claim that this is Israel. You see, there's a controversy going on right now. And what Minister Farrakhan is representing is getting to the root of the controversy, because it shatters the lies that this whole world is built upon.
Okay. Brothers and sisters, if you're just now tuning in, Facebook Live, to the Self-Improvement Basis for a Community Development Talk Show. I'm sitting here with my brother, Ilia Rashad, Nation Brothers. He's a member of the research team of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. And today we're discussing Farrakhan, the Jewish controversy, and the time and what must be done. Now, I can see the screen a little bit better, and I like to read this over and pay the respect that is due.
Sure.
So what the Muslim believe, point number 5, said we believe in the resurrection of the dead. Not in the physical resurrection, but in the mental resurrection. we believe that the so-called Negroes are most in need of mental resurrection. Therefore, they will be resurrected first. Now, the most important part of this, that is the basis of this controversy is, and now I imagine when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad began to teach this, the controversy started back then. But God chose the Honorable Minister Farrakhan to deal with this controversy and the Jews. It said, furthermore, we believe we are the people of God's choice, as it has been written, that God would choose the rejected that you mentioned and the despised. We can find no other person fitting this description in these last days more than the so-called Negroes in America. We believe in the resurrection of the righteous. Think about that.
You know what? I was listening to even the first part that we read, where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad states that because we've been in this wretched condition, that we will be the ones who will be resurrected first. That all of this ties into the root of the controversy. And because America's leaders, early American colonial leaders up until today, they've always known that something would take place that would spark an awakening, perhaps even a rebellion in these once former slaves. It was during slavery that Thomas Jefferson, one of America's founding fathers, stated, and I'm almost quoting it, he said, "I fear for my country when I reflect that God is just, and his justice cannot sleep forever." Now be mindful, Jefferson was a slaveholder. He and the rest of his colleagues and these founding fathers were slaveholders. And they knew that this would one day catch up to America. This is America's greatest sin, what they've done to God's chosen people. Even after the Nat Turner Rebellion, it was Senator Henry Berry in the Virginia House of Delegates who stated with the rest of his colleagues that we have now, as far as possible, prevented pretty much every avenue of light, talking about wisdom and knowledge, going back to critical thinking. They said that we have prevented every avenue of light from reaching the minds of these slaves. And as long as they can continue to make sure that this light never reaches the minds of black people, then the rulership of white people would be safeguarded. And the converse of that is that black folks would be on the level of the beast of the field. They would not be able to think critically as long as the right type of... And then all of these laws that have been passed since then, all of these things have been put in place to prevent black folks from obtaining the right type of knowledge. And again, that knowledge stems from what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad stated right there and what the Honorable Minister Farrakhan has been proclaiming for all of these decades. And that truth is that black people, one, are the original people and are the people of God's choice. The converse to that is that there's another people, there is another group that has been lying and perpetrating as the people of God, but they are in fact what Jesus called the synagogue of Satan. You see, or what John the Revelator called the synagogue of Satan. So this is the hour. This is the day and time when things are becoming manifest. This is the day and time that Jefferson and those founding fathers feared, because they see their world falling. They see the world of white supremacy crumbling, and they see a subtle awakening of black people that's taking place, where black people are starting to find out, even as wretched of a condition that we've been put in, as foolish as we behave, because all of that is by circumstances, there's still an awakening that seems to be taking place where black folks are starting to realize, you know what, I am, this part of this chosen people. And once we really find out and accept who we are, that's automatically going to bring about a clash of civilizations.
Now, brother, listening to you, I can talk to the average preacher, and I tell him that we are the fulfillment of Genesis 15 and 13. But he probably would tell me, no, son, it's them Jews. Why can we see ourselves fulfilling Genesis 15 and 13 and act in accord with that? And most of all, why we can go back to the Congressional Library and we can do the research. And it would tell us that we first came here in 1555. Mathematics would prove that we've been here 400 some years. But we can't draw a parallel between us being here and that particular scripture.
As a people, we have been so deceived and so used to being deceived that deception has now become normalcy. It's become commonplace. And we are so content in believing and accepting nonsense that when facts and truth comes along to dispel that nonsense, we would much rather hold on to that which really doesn't even make sense. You know, this is just part of our unfortunate conditioning as a people, you know, and unfortunately, religion has played a vital role in this deception, in this conditioning. But facts show us that the so-called Jews who have occupied what they call the state of Israel, who have long been believed to be this chosen people. Even many of your leading rabbis and Jewish scholars will attest to the truth that debunks all of that. I think it was Rabbi David Wolpe, who was one of the leading rabbis in the country out on the West Coast. He, as well as several Jewish archaeologists and historians, all bear witness that the Exodus and the 400-year sojourn of God's people in Egypt that we read about in the Bible, there is no historical proof that can validate that. And this goes back to what we talked about. There are some things in the scripture that are prophecy, and there are some things that are history. And because of our lack of critical thinking, we've become to the point where we can't even distinguish prophecy from history. So we just believe it because it's there. But your learned Jewish scholars and rabbis know and have admitted that they know that this Exodus and this so-called history that we read about in the Old Testament concerning Jews enslaved to Pharaoh for 400 years, that never happened. And this, Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, has challenged the world of scholarship, challenged the world of theology.